Well, the season of spring officially begins this weekend. Who's excited about that? I definitely am, because, the weather just in the past week has felt like riding a roller coaster. 70 degrees one day, snowy and freezing the next, then back to 70. It's almost like nature has a mind of its own, which can be sometimes hard for people like me to fully grasp. So this is week 3 of our Lenten message series titled 5 Things Every Disciple Should Do. The readings each week present us with one thing that we can do to grow in our faith and to show a skeptical world that our faith is credible. Week 1, we were told to be like Jesus and resist temptation. Last week's message was that we should be like Peter and hear the voice of God by turning down the volume of negative voices and committing to prayer. Today's gospel message is that we should give people in our lives another chance. Let's turn to the gospel now. Well, unlike me, Jesus seemed to have a really good grasp of nature, as did many of the people he preached to. Most of them worked the land as farmers or shepherds. So the examples he used with his stories were ones that they could relate to, like today's gospel parable about the barren fig tree. For 3 years, that tree never produced a single fig. So the owner ordered his gardener to cut it down because it was just exhausting the soil. The most common interpretation of this parable is that it's a warning meant for those who would want to follow Jesus, telling them they must bear fruit for the kingdom. If they don't, they're just like that barren fig tree. They're taking up space, but they're not good for anything else. But I think there's another lesson to be learned, and one that we're focusing on for this series. I believe that Jesus is saying that we must be like the gardener with people in our lives. Be the gardener. What do I mean? Well, think about what he did. When the owner ordered the gardener to cut down the barren fig tree, here's how he responded. "Sir, leave it for this year also, and I shall cultivate the ground around it and fertilize it. It may bear fruit in the future. If not, you can cut it down." In other words, he had a plan to bring about change. To help the barren tree to grow, first he would give it time. He would be patient with it. But not only that, he was going to care for it. He would cultivate the ground and fertilize it. He would give it nourishment, attention, and care. He would use every tool at his disposal to help and heal that tree. I'm no gardener, but that sounds to me like a plan for success. With all that care and attention, it's hard to imagine that tree not producing figs next year. But remember that this is a parable, a lesson about life and faith. So what's the meaning? I think we all have people in our lives who can seem like barren fig trees. People who seem stuck, who aren't growing in ways we think they should, or not changing as fast as we want. It might be a family member caught in addiction, a friend battling depression or anxiety, a coworker whose behavior is self-destructive, a classmate in an abusive relationship. And in mentioning these behaviors together, I'm not saying they're all the same, because they're not. Some involve medical issues. Some are more emotional or psychological. What they all have in common is that they are happening to someone we love and care for. And the greater our love, the more likely we get drawn into their struggle, which can exhaust us and keep us from growing. So what are our options? I think there are 3. The first option is the one the owner in the parable had towards the barren fig tree. Just cut them off. Write them out of our lives. And if you feel like you're at the end of your rope, feel like you've done all you can for that person, this option is kind of understandable. You just want to save yourself from further hurt. Cutting them off or out of your life helps you, but it won't help or change the person you love and care about. The second option is to keep giving until you have nothing left to give, giving endless amounts of time and attention, perhaps draining your savings and giving your heart. Each time you give more, you're hoping that it will change things, that the situation will improve, but it rarely does. And this cycle of giving more and more leaves you exhausted, spent, barren yourself. The third option is the one today's gospel presents, which is to be the gardener. He didn't give up on the fig tree, but he also knew he had to intervene if there was going to be any hope for improvement. He didn't say, well, let me keep doing what I've always done and things will improve. The gardener had a plan to bring about change. When it comes to that person in your life who is dealing with something major, you need a plan too. Your plan might entail changing what you're doing, changing how you relate to that person who is hurting. It's admitting that what you're currently doing is not working for you or the other person. So if this is Jesus' message to us in this parable, how do we do it? Well, the first thing you need to do is get the right tools to help you help them. The gardener was going to employ every tool at his disposal to help the barren fig tree. You'll need tools as well. Like I said, not all situations are the same. But when it comes to helping a loved one who is struggling with an addiction, there are powerful resources available, tools that are proven to work. 12-step programs like Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, Gamblers Anonymous are designed to help the person with the addiction. But there are also support groups for their loved ones like Al-Anon and Alateen. For other issues, whether it's something physical or emotional, there are other groups that provide support. There's counseling to seek out, as well as online help and lots of resources. This will help you get informed and educated about the situation so you are better able to help. You will find tools to respond with love. And these things will help you realize that you are not alone. Seeking help can also help to dismiss any myths or misconceptions you might have about what your loved one is going through. And this leads into the second thing you need to do, and that is to care for yourself. Without self-care, you won't be able to help the other person because you will be exhausted and burned out. Self-care includes turning to family members or friends who can provide wise counsel and encouragement. Self-care includes basic tools like eating right and exercising, taking time off from the situation if you can. And self-care must include prayer, turning to God and turning it over to God every day. In prayer, ask God to fill you with patience, wisdom, and love, to keep loving and not stop loving that person in need. In just a few moments, we will offer our prayer, the faithful. In our last intention, you will be invited to silently pray for your loved one who is struggling with something in life. When we pause, call them to mind. Ask God to heal them and help them to grow stronger each day. Amen.